Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a mystery that blends the eerie charm of the old with the pulse of the modern world. Get ready to explore stories that whisper secrets of the past and ignite your imagination in the most unexpected ways. Let's get started. In the restless hum of a city that never truly slept, where towering glass monoliths and aging brick structures coexisted in a patchwork of eras, Cassandra Reeves found herself drawn to a place that defied explanation. The night was heavy with moisture and promise, a chill wind carrying hints of secrets whispered long ago, and as she stepped off the subway onto a nearly deserted street, every sense tingled with the anticipation of what was to come. Neon signs blinked sporadically in the distance, and the wet asphalt reflected their muted glow in a distorted ballet of light and shadow. Cassandra's destination was an old apartment building nestled between modern high-rises and forgotten warehouses. Its facade was a patchwork of worn stone and rusted metal, its windows dark and watchful. The structure seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, as if every crevice and crack stored memories of lives lived and lost. Despite the hum of the city around her, a disquieting silence clung to the building, making it appear as a relic from another time, a silent witness to secrets that could not be easily forgotten. After negotiating a narrow, dimly lit alleyway that led to a battered wooden door, Cassandra hesitated. Her breath fogged in the cold air, and for a moment, she wondered if she was imagining the sense of being observed. But the decision was made long ago. Her instincts, honed by years of chasing urban legends, urged her forward. The door creaked open at her touch, and she stepped into a lobby that smelled of old paper, dust, and an indefinable sorrow. Faded portraits lined the walls, their subjects' eyes following her every move with a mix of curiosity and regret. A solitary chandelier, its crystals dulled by time, cast weak beams across the mosaic floor, making the space feel both grand and oppressively forlorn. At the reception desk, behind a stack of yellowed documents and a thin layer of grime, stood Mr. Linton, a man whose appearance suggested he had seen too much and cared too little for the passage of time. His eyes, a pale and steady gray, met Cassandra's with an almost imperceptible nod. "Welcome to the Remnant," he said, his voice low and measured, as though each syllable was weighed against years of unsaid words. "I trust you have come seeking answers." There was a gravitas in his tone that made Cassandra's heart race. She had come to this place not only for the stories hidden in its walls but also to understand the inexplicable pull it had on her own soul. Settling into her modest new apartment on the 4th floor, Cassandra found that the space was as much a puzzle as the building itself. Sparse furnishings, inherited from previous tenants, spoke of a life abruptly abandoned. A threadbare rug, a crooked mirror with an ornate frame, and a desk piled high with forgotten letters formed the entirety of her surroundings. But it was the atmosphere, the subtle shift in the air, the almost imperceptible hum of voices when no one was near, that left her with a sense of foreboding. Even the city outside, with its ceaseless traffic and distant chatter, seemed to pause at the threshold of her door, as if acknowledging a boundary between the living and the lingering dead. During the first few nights, Cassandra's dreams were invaded by fragmented images of sorrowful faces and whispered conversations. In the waking hours, she would catch herself staring at the dark corners of her room, half expecting to see figures moving just beyond the reach of light. One rainy evening, as the relentless patter of rain against the window merged with the low hum of the city, a knock sounded at her door, a gentle, insistent tapping that reverberated through the silence. Heart pounding, she opened it to find a small, leather-bound notebook resting on the threshold. Its cover was embossed with a curious symbol, a labyrinth entwined with a crescent moon, and as she picked it up, the air seemed to thicken around her. Inside the notebook, neat, looping handwriting detailed experiences of someone named Evelyn, a former resident who had once lived in this very building. Evelyn wrote of nights filled with inexplicable voices, of shadows that stretched too long and whispered secrets in a language that resonated with a deep, primal sorrow. One entry, scrawled in trembling ink, recounted an encounter in which the walls themselves seemed to breathe, exhaling memories of love lost and promises broken. "We are echoes," the note read, "trapped between the flicker of a neon light and the silence of midnight, forever bound to these corridors. Cassandra felt a shiver run down her spine as she read these words, as though the building itself was speaking directly to her, a quiet, mournful dialogue spanning the gulf of time. Driven by equal parts dread and fascination, Cassandra began to explore every nook and cranny of the remnant. Her investigation led her to forgotten archives housed in the city library, where she unearthed newspaper clippings, faded photographs, and records of strange incidents spanning decades. Each document painted a picture of a building steeped in mystery, unexplained disappearances, fleeting apparitions captured in grainy photographs, and testimonies of voices carried on the wind during stormy nights. Late one night, in the hushed stacks of the archive room, she encountered an old manuscript detailing the building's origins. According to legend, the architect was a visionary who believed that the structure could serve as a conduit between the realms of the living and the dead. A vessel through which memories and emotions could seep into the physical world. His ambition was both his legacy and his curse, as those who once inhabited the space claimed that the building's walls seemed to murmur with voices long forgotten. Cassandra's own encounters grew more intense as days bled into nights. In her apartment, objects began to move subtly. A mug would slide off a table overnight. A book would be found open to a page she had no recollection of reading. One morning, she awoke to the distinct sound of soft weeping coming from the corridor outside her door. With trembling hands, she pressed her ear against the wood, the sound mingling with the distant murmur of the city, leaving her questioning whether grief had once been the true resident of the building. "Who are you?" she whispered into the silence, her voice a fragile plea. In response, a low, almost inaudible murmur rippled through the room, as if a chorus of lost souls answered in unison. A sound that was both comforting and terrifying. In a bid to understand the phenomenon, Cassandra began holding nightly vigils. She sat in the flickering glow of a single candle, notebook in hand, recording every detail, every stray word that drifted through the darkness. "I feel your pain," she would murmur into the emptiness, addressing the unseen presence that seemed to dwell in every crevice. These sessions became a ritual, blending introspection with an unspoken communion with the past. One particularly electric night, as a storm raged outside, she found herself face to face with a figure in a narrow hallway, a silhouette of a woman in a faded dress, her eyes deep wells of sorrow. "I am Evelyn," the apparition whispered, her voice both tender and tragic. "And I have waited so long for someone to listen." The figure faded as quickly as she had appeared, leaving Cassandra with a lingering sense of both connection and dread. Her conversations with these spectral inhabitants were punctuated by moments of clarity amid the chaos. One evening, while pacing the creaking floorboards of her apartment, she confided in a friend over the phone, a confidant named Marcus, who had always been skeptical of the paranormal. "Marcus, I know this sounds insane," she pleaded, her voice trembling with urgency. "But I can't shake the feeling that this building is alive, that it's telling its story through me." Marcus's voice, laced with concern and disbelief, urged her to be cautious. "Cassandra, maybe you're just stressed," he insisted, but even he couldn't dismiss the tremor of truth in her tone. Despite his admonitions, Cassandra felt compelled to follow the trail of whispers and half-seen visions that beckoned her deeper into the building's mysteries. Her quest led her to a forgotten wing of the remnant, where the corridor narrowed into a claustrophobic passage lined with ancient, peeling wallpaper. The air here was thick with the scent of damp decay and something else, something sweet and melancholy, like the ghost of a memory. At the end of the passage, behind a door that looked as if it hadn't been opened in decades, Cassandra discovered a hidden room. It was a small parlor, filled with relics of a bygone era, a dusty phonograph, a collection of porcelain dolls whose eyes seemed to follow her every move, and shelves lined with brittle, leather-bound diaries. In the center of the room, on a marble pedestal, stood a mirror framed in intricate carvings. As she approached, the mirror's surface rippled like water disturbed by an unseen hand, revealing not her own reflection but fleeting images of a life that had once been, scenes of laughter, heartbreak, and a relentless passage of time. Cassandra's heart pounded as she stood transfixed. In that reflective surface she saw herself not as the determined investigator she believed herself to be, but as a part of the building's continuum, a single thread woven into a vast tapestry of souls. "I'm not alone," she murmured, her voice choked with realization. The mirror, as if in acknowledgement, shimmered softly, and for a brief moment, the boundary between her reality and the spectral past blurred into insignificance. Over the following weeks, Cassandra's investigation became an all-consuming endeavor. She meticulously recorded every anomaly, every hushed conversation in the dead of night, every movement that defied rational explanation. Her journal filled with reflections that intermingled with evidence of the inexplicable. The city beyond the building continued its ceaseless pace, but within the walls of the remnant, time became a gentle, relentless tide that revealed the depths of despair and the beauty of memory. "Every creak, every whisper," she wrote one evening as she sat in the candlelight, "is a reminder that we all leave behind echoes of ourselves, even if we have long since faded away." One fateful night, the building seemed to awaken in a way that transcended any previous experience. A deep, resonant sound, like the tolling of a great bell, emanated from deep within its walls, vibrating through the floorboards and echoing in the hollows of Cassandra's heart. Drawn inexorably toward the sound, she navigated the labyrinthine corridors until she reached a grand, neglected foyer she had never seen before. There, suspended in midair, was a mosaic of shattered glass and aged photographs arranged in a pattern that defied explanation. Each shard of glass seemed to capture a different moment, a smile frozen in time, tears caught in a single glance, a silent promise of hope and despair intertwined. As Cassandra stood in the center of the foyer, the sound of her own heartbeat mingled with the distant echoes of voices long silenced. "Why are you here?" she whispered into the darkness, her question a plea for meaning. In response, the images in the mosaic shifted and reformed, revealing a story of forbidden love, profound loss, and a relentless desire for redemption. The spectral voices grew louder, forming a chorus that recounted a tale of lives intertwined across generations. It was as if the building itself was laying bare its soul, a soul marked by every heartbreak, every fleeting moment of joy, and every sorrowful farewell. In that transcendent moment, Cassandra realized that her own story was now irrevocably bound to the remnant. The building was no longer a passive repository of forgotten memories. It was an active, breathing entity that beckoned her to become part of its eternal narrative. The realization brought with it a mingling of terror and solace. An acceptance that some mysteries are not meant to be fully unraveled, but rather embraced as part of a larger, ineffable truth. "I am a keeper now," she murmured softly, her voice resonating with both determination and resignation. "I carry the echoes of all who have come before." With renewed resolve, Cassandra devoted herself to preserving the stories of those who had faded into oblivion within these walls. She recorded every spectral conversation, every tremor of the unseen, and every shard of memory that drifted through the corridors. Her writings, infused with raw emotion and intricate detail, soon began to circulate among those who believed that the past was never truly dead. Listeners and readers found themselves drawn into her narrative, a modern chronicle of loss, love, and the persistent specter of memory that refused to be silenced by the passage of time. In the quiet hours before dawn, as the first pale light crept over the horizon, Cassandra would stand by her window and gaze at the city. The neon glimmers and rain-washed streets bore silent witness to lives intersecting in fleeting moments, while somewhere deep within the remnant, the voices of the past hummed a lullaby of forgotten dreams. "We are all echoes," she would remind herself, a mantra that bridged the gap between her own mortal struggles and the timeless sorrow enshrined in the building's walls. Even as the modern world outside surged with energy and relentless progress, within the confines of the remnant there remained a quiet, unwavering truth, that every soul leaves behind a legacy of memories, and that in the interplay of light and shadow, of hope and despair, the past is never truly gone. The building had become a sanctuary for these echoes, a repository where every tear, every whispered confession, and every moment of beauty was preserved in delicate balance. And so, as the years passed and Cassandra's voice became one among many, the story of the remnant continued to evolve, a continuous, haunting narrative that defied the finality of time. Visitors who wandered through its corridors often remarked on the feeling of being watched by benevolent, sorrowful eyes, as if the building itself longed to share its secret. In hushed tones and in moments of quiet reflection, they would speak of a woman with fierce determination and gentle sadness, whose writings had unlocked a portal to a realm where every heartbeat echoed with the stories of those who had loved and lost. In the end, the remnant was not merely a building, it was a living testament to the power of memory, a silent archive of every soul that had ever dared to dream, to suffer, and to hope. And in that eternal interplay of shadow and light, of whispers and echoes, Cassandra Reeves found her purpose. For in becoming the keeper of its haunted legacy, she had not only unraveled the mystery but had also woven herself into the very fabric of the city, a place where every midnight, beneath the ghostly glow of neon and the quiet hum of a timeless sorrow, the past and present danced together in an everlasting waltz of life, loss, and the unyielding promise of remembrance. The rain had started early that evening, a relentless, whispering drizzle that blurred the neon edges of the city into a watercolor of anxious hues. In the heart of modern suburbia, where well-tended lawns met concrete highways and bustling cafes, the ordinary concealed its share of secrets. Amelia Rourke, a young architect with an appreciation for understated beauty, found herself inexplicably drawn to a neglected warehouse on the edge of town, a place locals dismissed as a relic of industrial decline. Something about its silent testimony to forgotten times whispered to her in the language of mystery. As she approached the building, the city's hum gave way to an eerie hush. The warehouse loomed against the storm-dark sky like a brooding sentinel. Its windows, clouded with grime, reflected fleeting images of distorted silhouettes, and its iron door creaked open as if in invitation. Amelia hesitated at the threshold, her heart pounding in sync with the patter of rain. In that moment, every caution she had ever learned seemed to dissolve, replaced by an insatiable need to explore the unknown. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and a faint, inexplicable chill that belied the summer heat outside. Shadows played tricks along the cavernous interior, dancing across walls layered with peeling paint and forgotten graffiti. The building's vast emptiness resonated with memories of voices and footsteps long past. As Amelia advanced, she began to notice objects left behind, a rusted key on a broken table, an old leather-bound journal with pages that crinkled under her touch, and a mirror whose surface shimmered like a disturbed pool of water. Her footsteps echoed in the silence until she encountered another presence. In a dim corner, beneath a collapsed beam draped in cobwebs, stood an elderly man in tattered clothes. His eyes, though clouded with the passage of time, held an intensity that belied his frail frame. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, voice low and trembling as if each word carried a lifetime of warnings. "Who are you?" Amelia asked, her voice barely more than a whisper in the cavernous space. The man smiled sadly. "I once believed in the ordinary, in a world that was safe and certain. But this place, it's a crossroads of lost souls and unfulfilled promises. My name is Elias. I have been tethered here by memories and regrets, unable to let go." Intrigued and unnerved, Amelia sat on a dusty crate, careful not to disturb a cascade of ancient papers scattered around them. Elias recounted fragmented memories of a time when the warehouse served as a gathering place for artists, revolutionaries, and those who dared to dream beyond society's confines. According to him, something darker had begun to infiltrate their sanctum, a subtle, insidious presence that whispered secrets of despair and manipulated the fragile boundary between the living and the dead. In the following days, Amelia's life transformed. Her modern apartment, filled with sleek furniture and minimalist art, now felt haunted by an undercurrent of the inexplicable. She found herself drawn back to the warehouse, compelled to piece together the enigmatic puzzle Elias had hinted at. Every visit revealed new clues, unexplained markings on the walls, spectral reflections in puddles on the floor, and a recurring motif in the journal entries, cryptic symbols and references to the unquiet silence. At night, Amelia began to experience unsettling dreams. In them, she wandered through endless corridors lit by flickering neon lights, hearing indistinct murmurs and catching glimpses of shadowy figures in peripheral vision. One particularly vivid dream found her standing in the center of a vast hall, its ceiling lost in darkness, as voices chanted in a language she could not comprehend. Upon waking, her heart raced with a dread that clung to her like a second skin. During one stormy evening, while poring over the journal in her small study, Amelia's phone rang. The shrill sound shattered the silence, and when she answered, a voice, soft, almost hypnotic, whispered, "Don't let the darkness win." The line went dead before she could ask who it was or what it meant. Unsure whether it was a cruel prank or something more sinister, she resolved to confront her fears head-on. Returning to the warehouse that night, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a resolve forged by curiosity, Amelia retraced the steps Elias had shown her. The building's interior seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Every sound, the drip of water, the creak of old wood, even the wind outside, wove into a tapestry of foreboding. As she walked down a narrow corridor lined with ancient, moth-eaten drapes, a sudden cold swept over her. The temperature plummeted, and her breath became visible, a fleeting mist in the dim light. Then she heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping that seemed to echo from the very walls. The sound grew louder, more insistent, as if urging her deeper into the labyrinth of forgotten rooms. With each hesitant step, the tapping resonated with her heartbeat, each beat a reminder of mortality and the inescapable passage of time. "Who's there?" she called out, voice wavering. The response was a silence so profound it felt like the calm before an inevitable storm. In a secluded alcove, illuminated only by the narrow beam of her flashlight, Amelia discovered a door she hadn't seen before. Its surface was adorned with intricate carvings that resembled ancient sigils and swirling patterns. She hesitated, hand hovering over the cold brass knob, before finally opening it. Beyond lay a small room that was startlingly pristine, a stark contrast to the decay of the rest of the warehouse. In the center of the room, a large, ornate mirror framed a scene that defied explanation. Within the mirror's reflection, Amelia saw not her own face, but that of a young woman dressed in garments that belonged to another era. The woman's eyes were filled with sorrow and longing, and her hand reached out as if to grasp Amelia's soul. Transfixed by the image, Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine. I'm sorry," the reflection whispered, its voice echoing in her mind rather than her ears. The moment passed as quickly as it had come, leaving Amelia to wonder if she had imagined it, or if it was the beginning of something far more complex. In the days that followed, the boundary between reality and the supernatural became increasingly blurred. Amelia began to notice changes in herself, moments of lost time, echoes of voices that weren't her own, and fleeting visions of a spectral figure trailing behind her in crowded streets. Her friends and colleagues remarked on her distracted demeanor, unaware of the inner turmoil that now defined her existence. Every time she closed her eyes, she was haunted by the unquiet silence, a constant reminder of that inexplicable night in the warehouse. Determined to uncover the truth, Amelia sought the help of a local historian, Dr. Rowan Mercer, whose expertise in urban legends and the paranormal was well known in certain circles. In a cramped office cluttered with dusty tomes and yellowed maps of the city, Dr. Mercer listened intently as Amelia recounted her experiences. "There are places in this world," he said in a measured tone, "where the fabric of time and memory wears thin. What you have encountered may be the residue of souls who linger between moments, never fully escaping the tragedy of their past." Their discussions spanned hours and led them to ancient records, obscure texts, and whispered legends. Dr. Mercer revealed that the warehouse was once the heart of an underground movement, a sanctuary where those persecuted by mainstream society found refuge. In its final days, as the world turned hostile to its ideals, the building became a mausoleum of forgotten dreams. The presence that haunted it, he theorized, was not a vengeful spirit but the collective sorrow of lives unfulfilled and hopes dashed by cruel fate. One evening, as twilight bled into night, Amelia and Dr. Mercer returned to the warehouse. Together, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, following a trail of subtle clues, a peculiar arrangement of broken glass, the faint smell of incense that no one could identify, and the ever-present, almost musical tapping echoing through the halls. At the center of their investigation lay the mirror, a silent witness to the tragedies of the past. Standing before it, Dr. Mercer spoke softly. "This mirror is not merely a reflection of our world. It is a portal, a threshold between what was and what might have been." His words resonated with the dim, flickering light as if the mirror itself absorbed every syllable. Amelia, overcome with a mix of dread and hope, reached out and touched the cool surface. In that instant, she was flooded with visions, scenes of laughter and love turned to anguish, of promises made in the glow of candlelight now corrupted by time. She saw faces that she recognized only from whispered tales, and in their eyes she perceived the deep-seated pain of unhealed wounds. "What do you feel?" Dr. Mercer asked, his voice echoing in the oppressive silence. "I feel loss," she replied, tears mingling with the rain streaming down her face as she recounted the images that swirled in her mind. "It's as though I've stepped into a tapestry of broken dreams, each thread a reminder of something irretrievably lost." As the storm outside intensified, so did the manifestations within the warehouse. The gentle tapping evolved into an almost frantic drumming, and the walls seemed to breathe with the cadence of a distant heartbeat. Shadows lengthened, twisting into grotesque shapes that defied logic, and the temperature plunged further, causing both Amelia and Dr. Mercer to shiver uncontrollably. In a moment of rare lucidity, Amelia realized that the warehouse itself was a living entity, its very essence intertwined with the memories and emotions of those who had once sought refuge within its walls. In the midst of this chaotic symphony of spectral echoes, a new figure emerged from the darkness. Unlike the earlier apparitions, this entity exuded an aura of calm determination. A woman in a faded, vintage dress approached, her eyes reflecting centuries of quiet resolve. "You have come to mend what was broken," she said, her voice both a caress and a command. "I am Lillian, once a guardian of this place. I have watched over these souls, and now I sense that you might hold the key to their release." The encounter left Amelia reeling. In Lillian's presence, the oppressive weight of despair lightened slightly, replaced by a glimmer of purpose. "But how?" Amelia asked, her voice trembling with both fear and anticipation. "How do we free them from this endless limbo?" Lillian's gaze softened as she replied, "By confronting the truth of our shared past. The sorrow that binds us is born of unresolved loss and unspoken words. To liberate these souls, you must unearth the memories that have been buried deep within this place and within yourself. Only then can the cycle of regret be broken." Emboldened by Lillian's words, Amelia and Dr. Mercer embarked on a painstaking journey of discovery. They scoured the forgotten corners of the warehouse, uncovering relics of a bygone era, a discarded photograph of smiling revolutionaries, a brittle love letter sealed with wax, and a music box whose melancholic tunes seemed to echo with hidden meanings. Each item was a piece of a puzzle that spanned decades, connecting the past to the present in a tapestry of longing and regret. Night after night, as the storm raged outside, the duo pieced together the narrative of the warehouse's history. In hushed conversations under flickering candlelight, Dr. Mercer and Amelia debated theories, revisited old newspaper clippings, and sought out the descendants of those once entwined with the building's legacy. Their shared quest forged an unspoken bond between them, a commitment to honor the memories of those who had been forgotten, and to confront the supernatural weight that had anchored these souls to a place of perpetual mourning. The more Amelia delved into this mystery, the more she began to perceive subtle changes in herself. Fragments of memories that were not her own started to surface, as if the souls of the past were speaking directly through her thoughts. In moments of solitude, she would catch herself humming a tune from another era, or feeling an inexplicable tug toward places that held no meaning in her otherwise modern life. It was as if the boundary between her identity and the collective memory of the warehouse was slowly dissolving, merging her present with the echoes of a lost past. One particularly harrowing night, as a violent tempest battered the city, Amelia found herself standing once again before the ornate mirror. The air was charged with electricity, and the usual hum of the building had given way to a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to emanate from the very foundations of the structure. In the mirror's depths, the image of the young woman from before reappeared. This time, her expression was one of determination rather than sorrow. "We must speak our truths," the reflection intoned, and the sound reverberated within Amelia's mind like a long-forgotten incantation. With trembling resolve, Amelia began to recount aloud the secrets that had haunted her since her first visit to the warehouse, the whispered regrets, the untold stories of love and loss, and the silent cries of those who yearned for release. Her voice grew stronger with each word, resonating with an authority that seemed to come from the very heart of the building. In that cathartic moment, the oppressive atmosphere began to shift. The frenzied tapping slowed, and the shadows that had once twisted in grotesque forms softened into gentle, mourning silhouettes. Dr. Mercer, who had been standing silently behind her, stepped forward. "We must honor these voices," he said, his tone resolute. "In facing them, in acknowledging their pain, we give them the chance to be freed." His words merged with the sound of the rain, each droplet a tiny promise of renewal. As dawn approached, the storm subsided, and a fragile calm replaced the night's turmoil. In the wan light of morning, the warehouse no longer seemed a mausoleum of sorrow but a sanctuary where memories were allowed to breathe once again. Lillian appeared one final time, a spectral smile touching her lips. "You have done what many thought impossible," she said softly. "You have given these lost souls a voice, and in doing so, have begun to mend the fractures in your own heart." In the days that followed, Amelia noticed subtle changes in the world around her. The city, once veiled in the constant hum of routine, now pulsed with a newfound vibrancy. Faces in the crowd held a glimmer of understanding, and even the most mundane corners of life seemed imbued with quiet resilience. The warehouse, though still standing in silent witness to the past, had become a symbol of transformation, a reminder that even in the heart of darkness, there lay a possibility for healing. Yet, even as the community began to embrace a sense of renewal, a lingering ambiguity remained. Late at night, when the world was quiet and the veil between realities was thinnest, Amelia would sometimes catch a glimpse of a familiar figure in the reflective surfaces around her, a subtle reminder that some mysteries, once awakened, never truly vanish. In these moments she would pause, heart fluttering with a mix of trepidation and hope, and whisper to herself, "Not all stories end with closure. Some, like ours, continue to echo in the unquiet silence." And so, in a world where the modern and the supernatural collided, where the passage of time was both healer and harbinger of lingering secrets, Amelia Rourke learned that to truly live was to embrace the shadows as much as the light. The warehouse, the voices, and the memories all converged into a timeless refrain, a haunting melody that would forever remind her that every ending was also a beginning, and that even the deepest wounds could someday find solace in the gentle cadence of forgiveness. In the stillness of a new day, as the sun rose and cast long, tender shadows over the city, the echoes of that fateful night lingered like a whispered promise, a promise that while some mysteries may never be fully unraveled, the act of seeking truth and offering compassion was, in itself, a way to transcend the darkness. The journey was far from over, but in the quiet persistence of the human spirit, there was a glimmer of redemption, a light that, though faint, would continue to shine even in the midst of the unquiet silence. I've always believed that the wilderness had a language of its own, a murmur hidden in the rustle of leaves and the sigh of the wind that only revealed itself when you truly listened. Last summer, driven by an inexplicable urge to escape the confines of city life, I set out on a solo camping trip to a secluded forest known for its towering pines and winding trails. I was in search of solitude, and perhaps a glimpse into the natural secrets whispered among the trees. Little did I know that this journey would expose me to something both beautiful and utterly terrifying. The drive to the forest was shrouded in the hazy light of dusk. I remember how the asphalt melted beneath the car's wheels, the distant hum of civilization fading until I was surrounded by endless stretches of green. Arriving at the campsite, a clearing bordered by ancient oak trees and pines that reached toward the heavens, I felt an immediate, inexplicable chill. Despite the warmth of the late summer air, a sensation of being watched crept over me. I set up my tent with practiced ease, the motions almost ritualistic, as if I was preparing not just for a night under the stars but for something far more profound. The first night was unnervingly calm. I sat by the small crackling campfire, its light dancing on my face and casting long, wavering shadows on the ground. The forest around me whispered secrets in an ancient language, the soft murmur of the wind through the needles, the creaking of old branches, and an occasional snap of a twig that sounded too deliberate to be the work of a mere animal. I scribbled down my thoughts in a worn leather journal, a habit I'd maintained for years, a way to document both my outer adventures and inner landscapes. As midnight approached, the fire dwindled to embers and a profound stillness descended upon the campsite. I was lying in my sleeping bag, eyes tracing the constellations through the gaps in the canvas, when I first heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping echoing through the darkness. It was soft at first, like the drumming of distant raindrops on a tin roof, but it grew steadily louder and more insistent. My heart pounded as I strained to locate its source, but the impenetrable blackness of the forest swallowed any clues. The tapping seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing more than the natural sounds of the wilderness, yet an uneasy feeling clung to me. I wrapped my arms around myself, the cold seeping into my bones, and closed my eyes in a vain attempt to find solace in sleep. But the tapping persisted, each beat aligning with the rapid thud of my pulse. In a moment of desperate curiosity mixed with dread, I unzipped my tent and stepped outside. The night air was cool and sharp, carrying with it the sense of damp earth and pine resin. I scanned the surrounding darkness, my eyes slowly adjusting to the faint glow of the moon peeking through the clouds. That's when I noticed something odd. Far off in the trees, just at the edge of the clearing, I saw a flicker of movement, a figure standing motionless beneath the boughs. I couldn't tell if it was a person or a trick of the light, but the shape was distinctly human. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking in the stillness. The figure vanished as if swallowed by the shadows. I told myself it was my imagination fueled by the eerie atmosphere, yet I couldn't shake the sense that I wasn't alone. Over the following days, I continued my camping trip, determined to dismiss the unsettling events of that first night as mere tricks of the mind. I hiked through dense undergrowth, bathed in the gentle luminescence of sunlit clearings, and took long, meditative walks along narrow forest trails. Yet every night, as darkness fell, the forest seemed to transform. The rustling leaves took on a sinister cadence, the wind whispered with an almost deliberate malice, and that persistent tapping returned with renewed vigor. On the second night, I decided to take a walk away from the campsite, hoping to confront whatever it was that had unsettled me. The forest that night was an otherworldly place. The familiar daytime paths turned into labyrinthine corridors of shadow, each step accompanied by a symphony of nocturnal sounds, the hoot of an owl, the scurry of unseen creatures, and the soft murmur of the trees conversing in a language older than time. I felt an almost magnetic pull guiding me deeper into the forest, as if the very ground beneath my feet was whispering secrets meant only for those brave enough to listen. After what felt like hours of wandering, I came upon a clearing bathed in the silver light of the moon. In the center of the clearing was a weathered stone structure, half obscured by overgrown vines and moss. The structure wasn't there on any map I had seen before, nor did it match any local lore I'd read in guidebooks or whispered by town elders. Its presence was as inexplicable as it was captivating, and despite the mounting dread in my chest, I couldn't help but approach it. Every step felt weighted with a sense of inevitability, like I was walking towards something both fated and forbidden. Standing before the structure, I reached out to touch the cool, rough surface of the stone. The texture was oddly comforting, a reminder of the permanence of stone against the fleeting nature of life. But as my fingers brushed against it, a sudden shiver ran through me, a jolt that wasn't entirely physical. In that moment, the stone seemed to pulse with an inner light, as though it were alive, harboring memories of a time long past. I could almost hear faint murmurs rising from within, whispers that hinted at secrets and sorrows too deep for words. Returning to my campsite later that night, my mind reeled with questions. I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was trying to communicate with me, that the structure was a key to something hidden beneath the veneer of reality. My sleep was plagued by vivid dreams where I was no longer alone. Spectral figures emerged from the darkness, their eyes filled with unspoken sorrow, their hands outstretched in silent plea. I woke up drenched in sweat, the echo of their voices reverberating in my mind long after I had roused. The third night was the most harrowing of all. I spent the day nervously preparing, gathering my journal and a small camera in a futile attempt to capture evidence of the inexplicable. As dusk fell, the forest once again enveloped me in its inky embrace. The campfire was the sole beacon of warmth, its flames flickering in a rhythm that now seemed ominous rather than comforting. I sat there, trying to steady my trembling hands, when I heard a soft rustling near the edge of the light. Slowly, a figure emerged, a woman clad in an old-fashioned dress that looked as though it belonged to a time centuries ago. Her eyes, wide and unseeing, seemed to peer directly into the depths of my soul. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely audible over the crackling of the fire. She tilted her head slightly, and in a voice that seemed to echo from a distant memory she said, "I am the keeper of forgotten souls." Before I could ask any further, she vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a lingering chill that extinguished the fire's warmth. I spent the remainder of that night locked inside my tent, the pounding of my heart and the incessant tapping outside a grim reminder of the mysterious presence that haunted these woods. The next morning, I found cryptic symbols etched into the bark of a nearby tree, symbols that I later discovered bore a striking resemblance to those I'd seen in my dreams. They hinted at a ritual, or a warning, a connection between the spectral apparitions and the ancient structure I had discovered in the clearing. Unable to shake the feeling that I was caught in a web of mysteries far beyond my understanding, I began documenting every detail of my experience. I recorded the voices in my dreams, the fleeting images of figures in the forest, and the strange occurrences around the campsite. I even attempted to capture the ghostly presences on camera, though every photograph I took turned out blurred and distorted, as if the lens itself was repelling the supernatural. One evening, as the sky bruised into twilight, I encountered a fellow camper by the name of Mark, a seasoned outdoorsman with a skeptical smile and a hearty laugh that belied any hint of fear. Over a shared meal around a campfire, I recounted my experiences, omitting details that even I couldn't fully explain. Mark listened intently, his eyes occasionally flickering with a hint of concern. "You're letting your imagination run wild," he said dismissively, though later that night, as I lay awake, I heard his voice echo in my mind, urging me to remain cautious. But the events grew too intense to dismiss as mere tricks of the mind. As days passed, I noticed subtle changes in my surroundings. The forest began to take on an almost sentient quality. The rustling of leaves sounded like hushed conversations, the shadows seemed to stretch and shift with purpose, and even the gentle lapping of a nearby stream carried an undercurrent of melancholy. I could feel the forest watching me, scrutinizing every move as if I were a character in its ancient narrative. One particularly disorienting evening, when a dense fog rolled in from the valley, I awoke to find the campsite shrouded in a surreal haze. The familiar outlines of trees and tents were blurred, and an eerie silence had replaced the usual nocturnal sounds. In the distance, I caught sight of the weathered stone structure again, its silhouette emerging ghost-like from the mist. My pulse quickened as I realized that this time, it wasn't alone. The fog seemed to swirl around it, forming shapes that resembled grieving faces. I couldn't tell if they were the tormented souls of those who had once gathered here or the lingering echoes of ancient rituals. Driven by a mixture of fear and an irresistible need for answers, I ventured closer to the structure, stepping carefully as the ground beneath me grew soft and uneven. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. As I approached, the mysterious symbols on the stone became visible in the flickering light of my flashlight, an intricate tapestry of cryptic designs that hinted at rites and secrets lost to time. I pressed my hand against the cold surface, and for a moment, I felt an overwhelming rush of emotions, despair, longing, and a sense of being irrevocably connected to something far greater than myself. In that instant, a voice, barely audible yet unmistakably clear, resonated in my mind. "Remember us, Remember what was lost. I staggered back, my heart pounding so fiercely I feared it would burst from my chest. The fog shifted, and the spectral faces seemed to smile mournfully, urging me to delve deeper into the mystery that entwined the forest and its long-forgotten inhabitants. The nights that followed blurred into a series of disconcerting encounters. I witnessed fleeting apparitions. A man in tattered clothes wandering aimlessly between the trees, a small child whose laughter echoed eerily through the darkness, and a woman in that old-fashioned dress who appeared now and then at the edge of my vision. I tried to rationalize these sightings as tricks of the mind, hallucinations born of isolation and fear, yet a nagging certainty told me that these were not mere figments but echoes of a reality too profound to be dismissed. My internal struggle grew as the boundary between waking and dreaming dissolved. Every rustle, every whisper of the wind, became a potential harbinger of something otherworldly. I began to document my thoughts with feverish intensity, scrawling notes on scraps of paper and in my journal, each entry a desperate attempt to capture the intangible essence of my experience. I recorded every detail. The subtle change in the temperature when a spectral figure passed by, the uncanny way the symbols on the trees seemed to rearrange themselves, and the persistent feeling of being caught in a loop of forgotten memories. One night, as I sat alone by the dying embers of my campfire, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. I turned slowly, my heart in my throat, and saw a figure emerging from the darkness. It was not Mark, nor did it resemble any of the apparitions I had encountered before. This figure wore a cloak of deep midnight blue, and its face was obscured by a hood. In a voice that was both commanding and gentle, it spoke. "You are not meant to uncover all that lies hidden here. Some secrets are bound by time and sorrow." I managed to stammer. "Who are you?" But the figure only inclined its head, as if acknowledging an answer I already knew. The words that followed, whispered almost too softly to catch, sent chills cascading down my spine. "There are things in this forest that must remain in shadow. To seek them is to invite a darkness you cannot escape." With that, the figure melted into the night, leaving me alone with my mounting terror and unanswered questions. In the days that ensued, I struggled to reconcile the rational part of my mind with the growing evidence of something supernatural at work. The forest, once a sanctuary of natural beauty, had become a labyrinth of echoes and ghosts, each step revealing another fragment of a haunting tale that spanned lifetimes. In the final hours of my trip, as I packed my belongings with trembling hands and a heavy heart, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving behind more than just the physical remnants of my experience. The forest had etched itself into my soul, a mosaic of memories, spectral encounters, and a mystery that defied explanation. I left with a lingering question. Had I merely witnessed the sorrowful echoes of the past, or had I inadvertently become a part of an ancient, unending cycle of loss and longing? Now, as I sit in the sterile light of my apartment, the memory of that camping trip haunts me relentlessly. I often find myself glancing at the edges of shadows, half expecting to see a spectral face or a flicker of movement in the periphery of my vision. The forest's whispers have not been silenced. They echo in the quiet moments before sleep, in the rustle of leaves on a windy day, and in the inexplicable feeling that some part of me remains forever intertwined with the mysteries of that night. I know I'll never fully understand what happened in those dark hours beneath the ancient pines. Perhaps some secrets are meant to remain just that, mysterious, lingering, and ineffable. But I can't help wondering if, somewhere out there, the forest still remembers. And if it does, will it ever be kind enough to reveal its truth, or will it keep me in its timeless embrace, a silent witness to the unquiet echoes of a past that refuses to fade away? The memory of that solitary night under the starless sky, the murmurs of unseen souls, and the enigmatic presence that guarded the ancient structure remains with me. I now live with the knowledge that in the vast expanse of nature, every sound, every shadow, and every whisper might be part of a story much larger than our own, a story that beckons to be discovered, yet warns us that some mysteries are best left undisturbed.